Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. This is Lesson 10, 2D Arrays. In this lesson, we will be going over declaring and instantiating 2D arrays, setting 2D array values, get a value from a 2D array, getting the number of rows and columns in a 2D array, looping through a 2D array, the enhanced for each loop for 2D arrays, 2D array algorithms, and the out-of-bounds error for a 2D array. Alright, to start this lesson, we're going to want to go up to this folder where we have currently saved everything and launch the package. Let's just give it a second to load. Alright, and then we're going to want to create a new class, and we're going to name it Lesson 10, because this is Lesson 10. Alright, then we're going to want to open our editor, delete everything, and remember the structure for a class. We're going to have public, then this is a class, and then we're going to name it lesson underscore 10. And then we're going to have our brackets. Then we need our main method, public static void main string array args. All right, then we need our brackets again, and all of our main method code will go here. So arrays in Java can store many items of the same type. You can even store items in two-dimensional or 2D arrays, which are arrays that have both rows and columns. A row has horizontal elements, a column has vertical elements. Two-dimensional arrays are especially useful when the data is naturally organized in rows and columns, like a spreadsheet, bingo, battleship, theater seats, classroom seats, or a picture. In battleship, letters map to the rows. A is the first row, B is the second row, and so on. And the column indices start with 1. Java actually stores two-dimensional arrays as arrays of arrays. Each element of the outer array has a reference to each inner array. Alright, so let me first show you what a 2D array looks like. So say we have a seating chart, and then we want to map out the ticket info for each. So it's going to be like ticket cost. So let me show you. So we have our 2D array. I'm going to just make it with 3 rows. So this is going to be index 1 for the row, index 1, and index 2. So we have index 0, index 1, index 2. All right? And then for each row, I'm just going to put in random integer values. So 2, 5, 7, 8. Just going to make this 6, 2, 1, 8. 9, 4, 0, 2, and that's it. All right, and then once we have labeled our row indices, we also need column indices. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3. All right, so this is essentially what a 2D array looks like. Again, it's organized like a spreadsheet. So you may be wondering, all right, how do we actually create these 2D arrays? So the first thing you need to do is declare the 2D arrays. So we're going to have int, and then we're going to have 2 brackets. That's how we signify that this is a 2D array. And let's just name this ticket info. All right. And then we're going to have equals new. It's the same structure as creating an object, and we're going to have our int. But remember, with arrays, we actually need some integer values within these brackets. And the reason for that is to signify the length. So the rows have a length of 3 because we have a total of 3 rows. So I'm going to put 3 over here. This first set of brackets represents the rows, and the second set represents the columns. So this is the length of the rows and the length of the columns. So we have a total of 3 rows, so that's why we put a value of 3, and we have a total of 4 columns. So we're going to put 4 over here. All right, we have created the array, but remember, when we create the array, it sets each value to null values. So each of these values are set at 0. So we can either go in and set each of these values, or we can do it in a more efficient way. Remember the other technique I taught with you with arrays where you could just start entering in values, right? Well, you can do that here for 2D arrays as well. So if you remember with 2D as arrays, these are actually arrays inside of arrays. So this is an array, this is an array, and this is an array, but we are using this big array to store 3 arrays. So let me show you how it works. So say we have equals, and then we have our array. So this is our main array. Say we had it with just integers, right? And we'd start putting in integer values. But what if I want to create an array of integer arrays? So that's why we put this extra set of brackets. So we have an integer array, treat this as a variable, but then we want to have an array of a bunch of integer arrays. So that's why we put the second set of brackets. All right. So this is our array right now. And within this array, we need to have 3 separate arrays. So because we have 1 array, 2 array, 3 arrays. So we have a total of 3 arrays, and each of these brackets signify the array. So this is the overall array, and inside this overall array, we are going to have 3 integer arrays. So now we can start putting in values. So in the first array, this represents the first array, so we're just going to put in these values. So let's go for it. 2, 5, 7, 8. Pretty simple. Now for the second array, we'll copy down these elements. So 6, 2, 1, 8. All right. And then for the third array, we'll put in these values. 9, 4, 0, 2. All right. We have now successfully created a 2-dimensional array. So hopefully you can see what I was saying earlier. We have a big array, but within this array, we have integer arrays. So we have an array of 3 integer arrays. Hopefully that makes sense. So now let's actually go to getting specific values of an array. So let's go through it. So say I want to access this element in the 2D array. All right, let's go for it. So I'm going to store everything within an integer value, right? Because we have integers. All of these are integers. So remember, for an array, we first call the array, all right, because it's called ticket info. And then for our brackets, the first one, again, represents the row. So first we have to go over here and look for the row index. So we were searching for this element, if I remember correctly, and that's at index 1. All right, so we're going to do index 1. And then for the column, that's also at index 1. So we're at row 1 and column 1. It's kind of like the coordinate plane in algebra. Pretty similar. Except in this way, instead of us treating this as the x-axis and the y-axis, and we start off at the x-axis, we start off at the rows first, and then we do the columns. That's how it is over here. So let's give an example. Say we had this at 2, 3. All right? Just put in random values. So let's go over here. So remember, this is first the row index. So we have to go over here, and we are within this row. And then this is the column index 3. So we have to look at column 3. What matches at row 2 and column 3 is the value 2. So this should print out the value 2. Let's give it a try. System.out.println, and we'll put in values so that we can see whatever value is storing. All right, so just to double check, in row 2, column 3, value 2. There we go. That's 2. So it's pretty simple. So what if I had it like this? And how does that make sense? How can this work? Well, it can work if we make this an integer array. The reason for that is because, remember, this is an array. We are storing arrays inside of arrays. So we have this 2. This is index 2. So this is the array at index 2 of this big array. So we can store that entire array inside this integer array. So if we start printing out value, we're just going to get a memory address because it's just the array. Right? An array. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. And now, what if we want to set values? Remember, within these arrays, we can just use the same thing. So say I want to set this value to 9. All right, let's do that. So this is at row index 1, all right? And then it's at column index 2, all right? So the first one is 1, second one is 2, all right? We have now accessed that element successfully, and all we need to do is just set that value to 9, what we wanted to do, all right? And then this won't work anymore because we are not storing a value inside value. That integer value doesn't exist, so we can delete that print statement, and this should have everything. So now, when we actually do this, this has a value of 9. Pretty simple. All right, so let's try another one. Say I want to set this value to now 8. So this value has a current value of 8, and we want to set this value to 5. All right, so how would we do that? So this element is at row 1, column 3. All right, ticket info, row 1, column 3. And we want to set that value to 5. Done. So now this value is changed to 5. All right, let me give you an example. Ticket info, and say we have this at 0, and now this is at index 1. And I want to set this value to 7. Let's see what that would mean. All right, so we are at row 0. All right, we're in this row. Column index 1. Column index 1. And let's set that value to 7. That's essentially what it would do. We first went to row 0, column 1, and changed that value to 7. Pretty simple. It works the same way as array, except now we are using 2 brackets. All right, so now that we have talked about setting 2D array values and getting a value from a 2D array, let's talk about getting the number of rows and columns in a 2D array. So let's reset our array. So let's bring it back to the values that we had. All right, so 2, this should be 5, 7, 8, 6, 2, 1, 8, 9, 4, 0, 2. All right, everything is perfect. So let's actually talk about how do we get the specific number of rows and columns in a 2D array. So we first need our print statement because I'm just going to be printing it out. So remember, within arrays, we just do ticket info dot length, right? That should give you the length of the array. Well, this statement is actually valid for a 2D array as well. Reason is because remember, these are arrays inside of arrays. So the ticket info is a 2-dimensional array. So this array has a total of 3 arrays, so it has a length of 3. Look, we have 1 element, 2 elements, 3 elements. So this should return a value of 3. Let's give it a try. 3. So a simpler way to look at it, instead of measuring the number of elements within the big array, we can just treat this as the row number. Look, we have a total of 3 rows, so this should give you the row length. Now, how do we get the length for the columns then? Well, we can do it this way. Just take any random element within this array. Say we take this element, all right? And this element had a total of 4 values. And we have a total of 4 columns. All right, so this one also has 4 elements, and this one also has 4 elements. So all we need to do is get the length of this array. So to access this array, we can just type in any one. So array 0, and then all we have to do is call the length of this array. So first, we access this specific array. All right, that's what we did when we called ticket info 0. And then we just call the length for that array. So now that should print out 4, the column length, in other words. 4. Pretty simple. So remember, For row length, you just do this, and for this, you can just put any value. I can put 1, I can put 2, I can put 0. Any valid number will work. All right? So that's pretty simple. Now that we know how to get the specific row and column lengths for a 2D array, let's actually go through and print out this 2D array. All right? So this is where we go through looping through a 2D array. So remember, for an array, we just had int for int I equals 0, I is less than ticket info dot length, right? I plus plus, right? That's how we did it for a standard array. And then all we do is just go system.out.println and say ticket info was a one-dimensional array, ticket info, and then at I, right? That's how we do it. Well, we can also do that for this, but essentially what we're going to get is 3 memory addresses because we are looping through the entire ticket info array, so this loop is going to run a total of 3 times, remember? Because we have a total of 3 arrays inside of our array, or 3 elements inside of our array. These elements happen to be arrays. So if we just try this out, all we're going to get is 3 memory addresses. All right, that's the first step. All right, we were able to access each one of these elements inside the big array. We were able to access each of these arrays. So we've gone through and looped through the rows. Remember, ticket info.length, all that means signifies is just the rows that we have. All right, so how do we actually go through and loop through the elements in the columns? So essentially, we've accessed this array, and all we need to do is just loop through the elements within this integer array. So what we do is put in a loop inside of the loop. And inside this we have an int j. The reason why I'm naming it j is because it needs to be something different than I. So we are not messing with the I, whatever's going on over here. So we'll just make it j equals 0, right? We'll just make the standard. So j is less than ticket info. And then we can choose any random array. Remember, all we're doing is getting the column length. We can have 0, we can have 1, we can have 2, it really doesn't matter. And then we're just going to call dot length. And then j plus plus. All right, so then we go through and bracket each of these. And essentially what we are doing now is this loop is going to run a total of 4 times because there are 4 elements within each array inside of the big array that we have. So now all we have to do is system.out.print, and then I'm just going to make this print, not println, because I want it to be shaped like this. And then all I'm going to do is just call ticket info, and then remember this is the row because ticket info.length represents the row, all right? So we'll just put I as the row, and then for the columns we'll put j because ticket info dot a bracket of certain array dot length, that'll give us the columns. So when we do that, we get that, and then I'm just going to add a space to separate each of these elements. All right, so what's this going to do is put each of them in a line, and then for each, after we get done with a certain row, I want to move on to a new line. So after each of this loop, we're just going to put system.out.println and just move the cursor down to the next line. So let's go through it. See, printed out the 2-dimensional array perfectly. So let me go through and trace through this code. So we have for int I equals 0, I is less than ticket info.length. All right, so this loop is going to run a total of 3 times because we have 3 elements again, and it increments 1. All right, so let's keep track of that down here. I is set to 0. All right. And then we start a new loop. J is at 0. All right. So we have J is set to 0 as well. All right. And this is going to run for ticket info at 2. All right. That is this element right here, dot length. So the length of this array is 4. So this is going to run 4 times each time. So we just need to make sure J is less than 4. All right. So for the first iteration, we'll do, all right, ticket info at row 0. And then column 0, because J and I and J are both 0, that's 2. All right, so we printed out 2, printed a space, and then we check, all right? And then we increment by j by 1. Is 1 less than 4? Yes, 1 is still less than 4. So we do, then we print out this element, row 0, column 1. Then we print out 5, all right? We printed out 5, then we printed a space, and then increment j another time, 2, all right? And we check, all right, we're still on row 0. Go to column 2, all right, print out the element 7, then we print out a space, increment j by 1 again. 3 is still less than 4, all right? So we print out row 0, column index 3, that's 8. So we print out 8, then we print out a space, and increment j 4. Okay, 4 is not less than 4, so this loop terminates, and we are done with this loop. Then what we're going to do is do system.out.println, and all that does is move the cursor down here to the next row. And then we do the same thing all over again. We loop through this and print out each element, so go down to the next row and print out this. Pretty simple. And then once this I3 is less than 3, which is not less than 3, we're going to start doing I++, and that's going to just turn off the loop. All right, pretty simple. So because 3 is not less than 3, the loop terminates. And the reason why 3 got that way is because we incremented 1 every time. So pretty simple. So if you ever want to access each element in a two-dimensional array, all you have to do is just a loop within a loop, and then do ij. All right, and remember, using the row length, we do ticketinfo.length, and for the column length, we can do ticketinfo at any index that is valid.length. All right, pretty simple. Now let's go through and do enhanced for each loop. So remember, we could also do it this way. So we have 4, and then remember we are doing arrays within arrays, so this is an integer array. So within the ticket info, we have a total of 3 integer arrays. So we need each of these to be integer, and I'm just going to name this inner array, because this is the inner array inside of this outer array. And then we're going to have colon, and we are using ticket info. All right. So now we're able to access each one of these arrays. And then within this loop, we have to do int, and then I'm going to just name this val, or value, right? And because we are accessing a specific integer value, and we get this from the inner array. So whatever array that we are inside, we are just going to get the specific value from each one. So remember, this is an enhanced for each loop. So we are first looping through each of these arrays, and within every time we get through one of these arrays, we have to loop through each element, and we use value. So whenever we print this out, we don't have to use this. All we can do is just value, and it should work. Here, let's give it a try. Clear it out just to make sure nothing exists, and print it out. See, print it out our array. So that's how you do it with the enhanced for each loop. So let's go through and talk about a specific 2D array algorithm. So we have our two-dimensional array, all right? So we have ticket info, and remember, arrays, 3 integer arrays within an array, all right? And let's go through and add up all of these values. So remember, to access each element, we just do int, we'll do sum equals 0. This is where we're going to store the sum. And then we want to just print out the sum at the end. Print ln, and we'll just print out the sum. All right, let's clear this out. So right now it's 0, but we have to add each element value to the sum. So remember, to loop through each element inside a two-dimensional array, we have to have our double loop. So for int I equals 0, I is less than ticket, info.length, I++. All right, we've looped through the rows. So now let's go through and loop through the columns. So then we do for int I, oops, we need to make this j because it needs to be something different than I. So j equals 0, j is less than ticket, info at 0. Remember, it could be any index that works. Dot length j++. All right. And then what we want to do is total plus equals. And then all we want to do is ticket info at ij. So we've accessed each element and we are adding it to the total each time. And whoops, this is actually sum. And then we're going to print out the sum. So let's give it a try. 54. And let's see if we're correct. So 2 plus 5, 7. 7 plus 7, 14. 14 plus 8, 22. 22 plus 6, that is 28. 28 plus 2 is 30. 30 plus 1, 31. 31 plus 8, that is 39. 39 plus 9, that is 48. 48 plus 4 is 52. And plus another 2, that's 54. All right, it ended up working out perfectly. You can pause the video and calculate that self if that was too fast for you. All right, so we've only been oriented ourselves around integer arrays, but we can also do the same thing with string. All right, say we deleted all of this. All right, and we have our two-dimensional arrays. So, and say we add strings, we can have them out of strings as well. And let's just say seating chart. All right, and let's just set this to our array. So we're gonna have our array. I'm just gonna make this a 0 and 1, and we'll have our array. So I'm just gonna make this a very small two-dimensional array. We're gonna have a total of 3 columns and 2 rows. All right, so since we have 2 rows, we need to have 2 inner arrays because we need to have 2 string arrays. All right, so let's go through it. So let's say we have this as Sam, Bob, Mac. All right, so let's orient these indexes properly. So indices, my bad. And it's going to be Mac. And there we go. And here let's have Rob, Cat, and let's just name this guy Dat. All right, so we have our two-dimensional array. So let's go through and put all of these names in. So that's going to be our first string array, and this is going to be our second string array. Hopefully you guys understand how this works. So that's our array. And now if we want to get a specific value, we can just do system.out.println, and let's just say seating chart at 0 at 1. All right, so what that should return is, remember, row index 0, column index 1, Bob. All right, so it should print out a value of Bob now. Let's give it a try. Bob. All right, we can also create these two-dimensional arrays out of doubles, and remember, we can also do it out of a class that we have. So let's delete this. And we have our date class still. So date, we'll make this a two-dimensional array. Data, whoops, equals, and I'm just going to do it the standard way this time. Date, and let's just make this simple. So we'll have 2, 4. Or let's make this actually 3. All right. So essentially what our array is going to look like now is, so we have 0, 1, whoops, yep, that's all we have because we only have 2 rows. And up here, we're going to have a total of 3. So 0, 1, 2. All right. So let's walk through it. So this is going to be like, I'm just going to name memory address. So we have memory addresses because these are all pointing to specific objects. So M. Remember, it doesn't matter what the memory addresses are. We don't really care. And these memory addresses point to the specific object. So these are like the directions to the object. Remember how we had talked about in the class lesson. So these are all just memory addresses. And these really don't matter to us. So to initialize each of these values, all of these values are right now set at null. We haven't instantiated any of the objects yet. So let's actually go through and do it. So I'm actually going to make this a smaller array because we don't want to instantiate so many objects. So I'm just going to get rid of this, and we'll just have a 2x2 array, short and sweet. So let's go through this. So data at 0 and at 0 equals new date. I'm just going to set all of these to default values. So date 0, 1. Oops, I forgot a bracket. Equals new date. And we can just start copy pasting now. All right. Change all of these. And we'll have 1, 0, and 1, 1. All right. And this is all data. So data. All right. So all of these values should now be set to default date values. So to access each element, let's go through here. So system.out.println, and I'm just going to make this one. This one is going to be the only one that's not default. 4/7/2018. All right. And we know that because if we go into our documentation, we can see that the first one is day, second one is month, third one is year. All right. And then what we're going to want to do is do data, and I want to access this element. So that's at index 0 for the row. All right. Row 0, column index 1. We're at this specific object right now. So for that one, we have to do data 0, column 1, and we have the memory address. And I want to get the specific day value. So remember, we have the object right now, so we have to call the method. So call get day, and that should print out the specific day. Whoops. This should be get day. All right, let's give it a try. And we have these arrows because we are referencing a date object in the lesson 10 main method. All right, 4. The reason why it's 4 is because the day we had set was at 4. So remember, let me walk through it again. So we are accessing this array. So data at 0 accesses this array. So now that we are within this array, we need to get the specific element within this array, which is at index 1 of this first array. So that's at index 1. And then now that we have access to a specific object, that's also just going to return a memory address of the date object. So in order for us to do something useful with it, we have to call a specific method within the date class. And when we look at our documentation, let's just say we try something different and call getYear. All right. So .getYear, we can call that on any date object. All right. And then we have our brackets. And this should return 2018 like we have had in our parameter. So let's give it a try. All right, 2018. Pretty simple. So you can essentially create 2D arrays of whatever you want. It could be of integers, double, string, or any class that you have created. Or say we can even create a 2D array of the math class, but that's of no use to us. And now that we have gone over 2D array algorithms, let's start and go over the out of bounds error. So the out of bounds error is pretty simple. Say we still had this array and we try to access a element that's at index like 5 and index 1, right? This is going to throw us an array because we are trying to access an element, an index that does not exist within this array. There is no index 5. Say we even had our row index correct, but we had our column index, something that was too large. We don't have a total of 7 columns. We don't have and index 6 for the columns. So the computer does not know what to do with that value, and it throws an error because it cannot find that specific index. So again, an overview of out of bounds error is this happens when a loop goes beyond the last valid index in an array. Remember that the last valid row index is data.length -1. So since we have a total of 2 rows, 2 minus 1 is 1, so that's the last index. Remember, it works the same way. And then the last valid column index for it is, say we had data at 0, all right, and then dot length, so that's 2 minus 1 is 1. So pretty simple. Well, I hope you all learned something today within this video. Again, if you did not understand anything in this video, please scroll down to the bottom of this page and you'll find information regarding how to schedule a tutoring appointment. I know all of these concepts can be difficult, and our organization is here to help you all out. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.